Good evening, and welcome once again to another gripping episode of The Last Clue Story. We hope you're safe, your loved ones are healthy, and life is treating your family well. They say fate decides who lives and who dies, but sometimes someone takes fate into their own hands, plotting cold-blooded murder through every means imaginable. And yet, defying all odds, the target survives. Not just once, but again and again. What's more shocking? The very next morning, that same person walks in with a calm smile, says, "Good morning," and carries on with their day like death never even brushed past them. This story takes us back to 1920s America, right into the heart of New York City. It was the era of Prohibition, when the U.S. government enforced a nationwide ban on the sale and consumption of alcohol. Legal liquor vanished, bars were shuttered, shops stopped selling, and the flow of alcohol came to a standstill. While the ban had its reasons, it gave rise to a new underground world. People turned to smuggling and began secretly purchasing or brewing their own homemade alcohol. But that so-called liquor was often dangerously toxic, claiming the lives of many who dared to drink it. Even America's drinkers felt the sting of those dry years, and frustration soon spread as the economy began bleeding revenue once earned from legal liquor sales. Bowing to public outcry and financial strain, lawmakers finally scrapped Prohibition roughly a dozen years later, around 1930-1932. Overnight, shutters flew up, bars thrummed back to life, and patrons toasted their newfound freedom. Yet the celebration was bittersweet. The Great Depression had already sunk its teeth into the nation, leaving legions jobless and the labor market in tatters. One of the many hit hard by the crisis was a man named Mike Malloy, an Irish immigrant living in New York City. Once employed by the fire department, Mike found himself out of work when the economic crash triggered widespread layoffs. Left with no steady income and little purpose, he drifted toward the one place that offered comfort, the bar. Alcohol became his daily escape, and he began drinking from sunrise to sunset. Strangely enough, despite his constant heavy drinking, Mike seemed to stay in good health. Like clockwork, he showed up at the same bar every single day. The bar was run by a man named Tony, who managed it alongside his 5 brothers. After Prohibition ended, business was decent, and the bar was back on its feet. But the brothers weren't satisfied. They craved more profit and soon found themselves tangled with shady individuals. It was the early 1930s, a time when crime in the city was on the rise. Driven by greed, they hatched a dark scheme. In 1932, they had recently taken out a life insurance policy, not on a man, but on a woman, and the payout was around $1,000, a hefty sum for that time. At that time, $1,000 was a fortune. So the brothers secured the life insurance policy in the woman's name and then slipped something lethal into her drink. She died soon after. Since the brothers had made themselves the beneficiaries, they stood to gain everything. With the help of a crooked doctor, a compliant insurance agent, and a few more shady allies, they managed to get all the paperwork processed smoothly without drawing attention. Everyone who played a role got their share of the payout. The money came in, the crime stayed hidden, and the whole matter faded into silence. Despite the ongoing depression and the bar's steady reopening, the brothers had grown addicted to the thrill and ease of fast money. After pulling off one successful insurance scam, they were eager for another payday. With a corrupt insurance agent in their pocket and ties to the local police, the risk felt minimal. So by late 1932, they devised a new scheme, this time even bolder than before. They created a completely fake identity and took out a life insurance policy on a person who didn't exist at all. For this new fabricated identity, they cunningly picked the name Mike Malloy, using Malloy almost casually as a made-up alias. Just like with their earlier victim, the brothers listed themselves as the beneficiaries on the fake policy. With the documents finalized, the next step was to find a living, breathing man they could present as this fictional Mike Malloy, someone they could later murder and report dead under that name. And with a crooked insurance agent and friendly ties to the local police already on board, they felt confident there'd be no legal obstacles in their way. They began hunting for someone whose disappearance wouldn't raise alarms, someone invisible to the world, easy to get rid of. For days, they watched and waited, discussing their twisted plan over drinks each night. Then, one evening, their attention locked onto a familiar face, a man who showed up at the bar like clockwork every single evening. He drank heavily, far more than anyone else, often staying until the place nearly closed. Yet every morning, without fail, he returned right as the bar reopened, flashing a cheerful grin and greeting them with a loud, "Good morning, gentlemen," before heading straight to his usual spot to start drinking all over again. Intrigued, the brothers decided to dig deeper into his life. They discreetly followed him for several days and soon uncovered the truth. He was homeless, had no steady job, and no family to speak of. Once a fire department employee, he was now just a drifter, spending his days panhandling and using whatever money he scraped together to buy alcohol. That's when it clicked. They found the perfect mark. No ties, no address, no one to ask questions if he vanished and completely consumed by his addiction. To the brothers, he was the ideal pawn. Use his real body to match their fake identity, kill him quietly, and walk away with the insurance money. With their target chosen, the brothers set their plan in motion. Each time Mike Malloy showed up at the bar, they gradually warmed up to him, acting like friendly regulars. After a couple of days of building trust, they started buying him drinks on the house. For Mike, free booze was a blessing, and he eagerly drank without a hint of doubt. Confident they had him right where they wanted, the brothers prepared their deadly weapon, a batch of cheap, toxic homemade liquor. Their strategy was cold and calculated. Keep pouring the poison drink until Mike's body finally gave out and he drank himself to death. This way, Mike's death would appear natural, making it easy for them to collect the insurance payout. Behind the scenes, everything was set. The crooked insurance agent was fully on board, along with a few police officers who expected their cut. This time, they had secured a policy worth $3,500, a massive sum at the time. Every morning, Mike would walk into the bar, sit down with the brothers, chat casually, and start drinking, completely unaware that those friends were slowly sealing his fate with every glass he raised. One day, they even told him, "Look, we're pals now. We really care about you." From that day forward, the brothers declared, all drinks in this bar were on the house for Mike. Drink as much as you want, no bill to pay. What more could Iron Mike, as Mike Malloy was nicknamed, possibly ask for? He was ecstatic. Every single day, he showed up beaming, and the brothers eagerly kept pouring drink after drink, each one tainted with toxic chemicals and cheap, dangerous ingredients. Their goal was clear: flood his body with poison until it finally gave out. They were certain no one could survive such a relentless assault of alcohol and toxins. For 10, 15, even 20 days, the brothers relentlessly served Mike glass after poison glass. Night after night, they watched him stagger out of the bar, certain he collapsed on the sidewalk or in a dark alley and never wake again. But each dawn brought a new shock. Mike would return, grinning, greeting them with a hearty "Good morning, gentlemen," and ready to drink once more. Despite their hopes, every night Mike got drunk and wandered off to find a place to sleep, whether on a cold sidewalk, tucked away in alleys, or leaning against building doorways, only to come back alive the next day. Every morning, the brothers would anxiously check to see if Mike had passed away during the night. But to their complete disbelief, Mike would rise, stretch, and walk right back into the bar with a bright good morning, grinning and ready for another drink. Day after day, they kept feeding him booze, certain it would take his life eventually. On a few occasions, they even searched the spots where he usually slept. And when he was nowhere to be found, they thought, this time he's finally gone. Yet come dawn, there he was again, alive and smiling. Their frustration grew with every morning Mike survived. They had already spent a fortune on alcohol, and Mike had swallowed enough toxic liquor to kill several normal men over. Frustrated, one of the brothers finally said, "This guy isn't going down easily. We need a new plan to finish him off." So they decided to step up their game and start slipping poison into his drinks. They chose antifreeze, mixing it carefully into his booze. Confident that a steady dose over 2 or 3 days would do the job, they fed him antifreeze-laced alcohol, expecting him to be dead by the end of the 3rd day. But on the 4th morning, to their utter disbelief, Mike walked in again, smiling and cheerfully saying, "Good morning." Frustrated and stunned, the brothers muttered, "What kind of man is this? Nothing is working." Determined, they switched tactics and began mixing tarpaulin into his drinks, a harsh chemical often used in paint and varnish. They poured sizable amounts of tarpaulin into his alcohol, convinced this poison would finally ruin his stomach, liver, and vital organs once and for all. Night after night, they forced Mike to drink the deadly concoction, certain this time he would finally die quietly and they'd collect the insurance payout. But every morning, to their astonishment, Mike returned, smiling and greeting them with his usual good morning. Bewildered, the brothers exclaimed, "What's happening?" Not even tarpaulin can take him down. Desperate, they turned to another poison called mineral spirits. Confident this would finish the job, they pour these chemicals into entire bottles of alcohol, making Mike drink poison bottles day after day without mercy. Next, they introduced a 3rd poison called methanol, adding large amounts to his drinks. Yet no matter how much toxic brew Mike swallowed, he stubbornly refused to die. Every morning, without fail, he'd stroll back into the bar, smiling and cheerfully saying, "Good morning." The brothers were beyond frustrated. They said, "We've been buying him free drinks laced with every poison imaginable for days, but this man just won't die. What's left to try?" Then they thought of a final chemical, one almost certain to kill. But the catch was mixing it into the alcohol would change the drink's color and smell, risking suspicion. So the brothers chose to be cautious, deciding not to give Mike a large dose of this poison all at once. Instead, they planned to administer it slowly and carefully. One day, they laced a sandwich with a deadly chemical and offered it to him, making sure everyone watched to avoid suspicion. When Mike was drunk, they handed him a sandwich, hoping it would finally end his life. To their surprise, he ate the entire sandwich without hesitation. Watching intently, they waited for a reaction, but instead, Mike asked for another. Cheerful and oblivious to their scheme, he went on to eat 2 or even 3 more sandwiches. The brothers thought, tonight he's done for. He won't be back tomorrow. But as always, the next morning Mike walked in, smiling and cheerfully greeting them with his usual good morning. By this point, they had tried 6 or 7 different methods and came to the shocking conclusion that he simply wouldn't die. They said poisoning his drinks and feeding him small doses isn't enough anymore. One bitterly cold night, with temperatures plunging to -26 degrees in New York, they gave him so much alcohol that he passed out completely. After Mike passed out, the brothers dragged him to a quiet street near the New York docks since he had no home. Picture this, it was a brutal -26 degrees, and they stripped him of all his clothes. Then they grabbed buckets of ice-cold water and dumped them over his body as he lay helpless on the freezing ground. A man naked and exposed to the open sky in such freezing temperatures, soaked with icy water. They kept pouring it over him, convinced this time he wouldn't survive. But somehow Mike endured it all. The following day, the brothers waited for news that a man had frozen to death on the street, but no reports came. When they went back to the spot where they had left Mike, there was no sign of him. They assumed the authorities or someone else must have removed the body. Evening passed, and Mike still didn't appear. For the first time, the brothers felt relief and began celebrating. The next day, he was still absent, and their celebrations continued. But soon they faced a serious problem. If they wanted to collect the insurance payout, they needed a body to present as proof. Without any proof of his death, they couldn't claim the insurance money, leaving them worried and uncertain about what to do next. Then, on the fourth day, the bar door swung open, and there stood Mike, smiling as usual, greeting them with a cheerful, "Good morning." The joyful mood instantly vanished. He took a seat, and despite their frustration, they knew they had no choice but to keep trying. Their payout depended on it. They resumed serving him drinks, but now with growing anger. These 5 men had tried everything imaginable, yet Mike stubbornly refused to die. Unsure of what to do next, they finally decided they had wasted enough money and it was time to end it for good. Their plan was simple: get Mike extremely drunk, take him out onto the street, and have one of them run him over with a speeding car. They believed the accident would finish him off. They got him heavily intoxicated, placed him in the middle of the road, and soon a car came speeding through, striking him hard. The driver sped away, and the men quickly left the scene. Days passed, the next day, then the second, third, and fourth, and even 3 weeks went by without Mike showing up. Everyone was relieved, convinced he was finally dead. They began making inquiries with the police and the accident department, hoping to find some record of Mike's death. They searched newspapers for any reports but came up empty-handed. Confused and frustrated, they wondered what was happening. If their plan had worked and Mike was hit in the accident, then where was his body? They checked with various authorities, but no body was ever recovered. After 3 weeks of disappointment, one day the bar door swung open once again. There stood Mike, smiling as always, greeting everyone warmly. By then, their patience had completely worn thin. They exclaimed, "We've poisoned him with 5 or 6 different chemicals, left him exposed naked to freezing -26-degree weather all night, drenched him in icy water, and even ran him over with a speeding car. What is this man made of? What kind of grit does he have? He simply refuses to die." Realizing their previous attempts were futile, they knew they had to come up with a foolproof plan to end his life. Finally, on February 22, 1933, they agreed that all the earlier efforts had failed, and it was time to kill him directly and without hesitation. After that, Mike was summoned to the bar and given more drinks. They led him to a room above the bar where a gas cylinder filled with carbon monoxide was stored. A pipe was placed into his mouth, and the gas was released until he passed away. After he died, they dragged his body and left it on the sidewalk. That day, after 8 failed attempts, Mike finally succumbed on the 9th try. When the police arrived, the body was still there. The doctor, who was colluding with the corrupt officials, declared the cause of death as pneumonia brought on by heavy drinking. Since he had been soaked in the cold, Mike developed pneumonia, which was officially listed as the cause of death. Afterward, the men took his body and buried it in a local cemetery. The police filed their report, declaring the death natural, and everyone involved was satisfied. They then used the death certificate to claim the insurance money through their corrupt agent, who ensured the process went smoothly. The $3,500 payout was credited to their account, a huge sum in 1933, roughly equal to $83,000 today, depending on exchange rates. The money came through, and everything seemed settled. Mike was finally dead, and the truth remained hidden. Time passed, but fate had other plans. Mike died on February 22, 1933, and by the end of that year, the men had spent almost all the insurance money. When 1934 arrived, in early January, tensions rose among them, likely over disputes related to the money. Arguments escalated into fights, and during one such violent scuffle, one of them attacked another. Tony, the bar owner, was deeply involved along with his brothers. On that day, a man was sitting in the bar who said something that sparked anger among them. Suddenly, they turned on him, and in the chaos, the man was accidentally killed. A murder case was filed, and the police arrived to arrest all of them, including Tony, for questioning. During the investigation, the police uncovered that the fight's true cause was the insurance money they had received. The bitter dispute over that money had tragically resulted in an unnecessary death. The police then probed into which insurance policy and money had sparked the deadly fight. During the insurance investigation, it emerged that Mike Malloy, an Irishman who had passed away, had named one of them as the nominee, despite having no known family. This raised serious questions. Tony and his brothers quickly became the prime suspects. As the investigation deepened, the police retrieved the death certificate and ordered Mike's body to be exhumed for a second postmortem. This second examination revealed that his death was suspicious and definitely not from natural causes. Although the cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning affecting his lungs and other organs, the report revealed clear evidence of foul play. Following this, the insurance agent was interrogated about the identity of the man, given he had no known relatives, friends, or neighbors. During the questioning, one insider cracked under pressure and agreed to testify for the government. He revealed the entire scheme, explaining how they had all conspired together because the man was homeless and had no family, took out an insurance policy in his name, and then attempted to kill him multiple times before finally succeeding, after which they collected the payout as their own. After the full truth was uncovered, the case against the elderly woman whose name was used for the insurance policy was reopened, leading to a trial. Following the proceedings on June 7, 1934, one of the 5 conspirators agreed to become a government witness and received a prison sentence, while the other 4 were sentenced to death. At that time, New York carried out the death penalty using the electric chair. On June 7, 1934, 3 of the conspirators were executed simultaneously by electric chair, dying from the shocks. Then, on July 4, 1934, the 4th conspirator was executed in the same manner. In the end, 4 men were sentenced to death and 1 was imprisoned. When the story broke in the media, detailed reports surfaced about all the bizarre and brutal attempts to kill Mike Malloy. He was given several nicknames, and his tale still lingers in local memory. One of the most famous nicknames was Iron Mike because no one could figure out what kind of constitution he had. It seemed as if he was made of steel. Poison couldn't touch him, being struck by car didn't stop him, and even enduring freezing cold nights soaked in icy water at -26 degrees left him unharmed. Nothing could bring him down. He was also known by other nicknames like Respin the Brass and Mike the Durable because of his incredible toughness and resilience. Nothing seemed able to kill him. He had cheated death 8 times. This remarkable story comes straight from New York. As I said earlier, sometimes fate has a strange way of protecting certain people, no matter how many times danger comes their way. But perhaps nowhere else in the world has there been a case where 5 conspirators plotted to murder 1 man for insurance money, only to find that he simply refused to die. That's the story for today. I'll be back next day with another fascinating tale. Until then, stay safe and look after your family and yourself. Thank you so much for listening.